Stepping into the fire and out on the arm of faith, I am Tricia Lee, and I accept your nomination that I run for the office of Mayor of Chicago. The first night I thought about becoming Mayor of Chicago, I thought to myself, well, what if no one will have you? What if no one wants you running for the office? So I took a straw poll of about 50 people around the neighborhood, and of the 50 people I polled, 49 would have me, and only one black lady was adamant that I not try and run for the office of mayor. As Robert Kennedy once said, it is from numberless diverse acts of courage and belief that human history is shaped. So history is being shaped tonight as one native Chicagoan wishes in her heart for a new city that is not based completely on violence from Inglewood and Roseland. History is being shaped tonight as each native Chicagoan searches his or her heart for the answer to the one question: who is the best person out there, and who is worthy enough to become the new mayor of Chicago? We will search our hearts for the answer, whether it is Mrs. Lee destined to become the new mayor or someone else. We will be diligent and thoughtful during the next 5 months and make no mistakes in finding the new mayor. What are the candidates' downfalls that could completely slow down the progress of the city? And which candidate has attributes and qualities that allow him to keep pace with the pace Richard M. Daley set for our city? Before we take just one more step forward looking for the new mayor of Chicago, let us take a moment to feel gratitude for having met Richard M. Daley and his wife Maggie Daley. With gratitude and goodness in our hearts, we thank God for sending both Richard M. and Maggie Daley our way to show us what the city of Chicago can be at its full potential. The city of Chicago has always been blessed by the Daley family, and Chicago is what it is today because of the good wishes and hard work of the Daley family. The tradition of the mayor of Chicago is a strong tradition that begins with William Butler Ogden becoming the first official mayor of the city of Chicago. Ogden was a Democrat, although the next 2 mayors of Chicago after Ogden would be members from the Whig Party, WHIG. By 1885, Levi Day Boone had become mayor of Chicago, running as part of the Know Nothing movement from the American Republican Party. These days we talk about having tea parties, but back then politicians talked about being know-nothings, that they knew nothing about what their political party had been working on lately. Boone back then ran an anti-immigration platform. Boone, who was nephew of Daniel Boone, was accused of not counting the votes of German and Irish immigrants from the Bridgeport area before grabbing for the office of mayor. Members of the Know Nothing Party also ran on the platform that Scripture was opposed to the practice of slavery. Levi Boone is credited for establishing the Chicago Medical Society and for helping to organize the Cook County Medical Board. The Know Nothing Party was a Native American political movement from the 1840s and 1850s, and members of the Know Nothing Party basically feared both German Catholics and Irish Catholics and didn't want those types trying to rule anything. In 1861, the first member of the Republican Party, a man named Julian Sidney Rumsey, became mayor of Chicago. Back in the 1840s and 1850s, and 1860s even, the job of mayor was such a desirable job that the person who became mayor could serve as mayor for just 1 year, and then there'd be a brand new mayor the following year. Julian Rumsey, the first Republican mayor and 22nd mayor of the city of Chicago, worked for a shipping company owned by his uncles that was known as Newbury and Dole. The firm of Newbury and Dole sent the very first shipment of grain from Chicago in 1839. Through Rumsey's efforts, some of our current standards for grain inspection are still in place today. Rumsey also served as president of the Chicago Board of Trade. Carter Harrison, the 33rd mayor of the city of Chicago, was assassinated in office. He served 2 terms in the United States House of Representatives and had been elected for a 5th term as mayor when he was finally assassinated. Harrison's letters about a trip to Yellowstone National Park were published in the Chicago Tribune. Harrison also became owner and editor of the Chicago Times, which is predecessor to the Chicago Herald and the Chicago Herald-Times. Harrison's assassination involved being murdered at his home by one of the Prendergasses after Prendergast had failed to win an office. Both the Haymarket Riot and the World Columbian Exposition took place while Harrison was mayor. And a lot of Harrison's legacy and his ways set us up for Richard J. Daley to become mayor someday, because it's Harrison who sets a tone of having a demagogue as mayor for the city of Chicago. Anton Cermak became the 44th mayor of the city of Chicago, and we all know the street that's named for him. Cermak was also assassinated in office. In the book, Frank Nitti, The True Story of Chicago's Notorious Enforcer, author Ronald Humble contends that Cermak was corrupt, so the Chicago outfit hired a man named Zangara to kill Cermak, and Cermak's death was also in retaliation for Cermak's attempt to murder Frank Nitti. Cermak is noted for giving birth to the Chicago Democratic machine, and a lot of Cermak's job was simply getting Chicago through the Great Depression. The gun of Giuseppe Zangara going off completes the formation of the Democratic machine, and the Chicago machine from that point on would be forever a part of Chicago. Ed Kelly was our 46th mayor, and it was Mr. Kelly who got us through World War II and moved us into 1950s America. Ed Kelly once crowned my own mother Miss State Street of Chicago, and he and Ray Bolger and the talk show host Mike Douglas made my mom a beauty queen during World War II. Ed Kelly distinguished himself as a mayor by reducing the city's debt by almost $100 million and leaving our city solvent. Ed Kelly, along with Patrick Nash, built what was known as the Kelly-Nash machine. Finally, Richard J. Daley and Harold Washington become mayor, and both of them died in office and died trying to do their best as mayor. Jane Burden stole or legitimately won an election just because of a snowstorm. Eugene Sawyer had to put on the mayor's robe when Harold died. And even David Orr had to serve 8 days as mayor while the city council scrambled to find a replacement for Harold. And so finally here comes Richard M. Daley, the 54th mayor of Chicago, taught well by his dad, Richard J. Daley. I'll never forget Richard J. Daley and his ways with people. And when my grandparents died, both of my grandparents were from Bridgeport, and God bless Richard J., he'd be there at the wake. He'd never forget the people from Bridgeport, and he'd always show up for a wake of anybody from Bridgeport. So Richard J. Daley was, for me, the ultimate politician, and in my mind, he was a much more sterner and perfect parent than Oprah Winfrey will ever be for Chicago children. You may not agree with my speech today, but I fight more than you think I fight today for my First Amendment right to speech in this country. A country now designed by Whoopi Goldberg and Oprah Winfrey. More than you think, it's quite a fight to speak just one word under my First Amendment right to speech on the federal airwaves. You may not agree with what I say today, but when history is written 100 years from now, Richard M. Daley will be remembered as one of the most liberal Democrats to ever rule America.